Hey guys, recently I decided I wanted to start sim racing and thought it would be cool to record videos and post my progress. Today I'll be driving Assetto Corsa Compitizione and testing all of the cars in the game to see what one I'll be using going forward. If that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. Testing will be conducted in practice mode so that we can see how each car reacts to tire degradation and different fuel loads. We'll be driving on Circuit Paul Ricard since it's a real life test track and has plenty of features that will test each car to their limits, or at least my limit. In the Realism tab, we have damage turned off so that we don't have to restart every time we hit a wall. Everything else is turned on. Weather conditions are clear and optimal for testing, and we'll be using the aggressive preset with each car. Now for how we'll rate everything. On screen now are the 13 cars we'll be testing. As a disclaimer, I will not be testing the Ferrari 296, Lamborghini Evo 2, or the Porsche 992 because they are DLC. There's plenty of cars to try in the base model, so I'll do a separate video in the future testing these. Throughout testing, I will be keeping track of our best lap with each car out of 10 good-ish laps. Next is the standard deviation to track consistency. If you thought there's no real world use for standard deviation when you learned it, here's an example. If your fastest lap is 155 and your average is 2 minutes, that looks like you're wildly inconsistent. But maybe you did 7 good laps between 159 and 201, but you had one really good lap and 2 bad laps. You're actually really consistent since 70% of your laps were within 2 seconds of each other. The only way to see this is with standard deviation. Our overall experience is next. This is a subjective rating based on looks, feel, sound, etc. And at the end, the cars will be ranked top to bottom in each section and given an overall score. Got it? Let's get started. The first car we'll be reviewing is the 2015 Mercedes-AMG GT3, and we'll start with a quick sound check. So this car does sound quite nice, but I did find that it understeered quite a bit into just about every turn, whether it was slow speed, medium, high speed, and it really felt like I was braking or I was steering more with the brakes than the gas or the steering wheel. I'm sure this could be fixed with different presets and settings, but being that we're a rookie sim driver, I didn't feel like getting too deep into the weeds, and it felt like it wasn't that on point. I did find that it had glimpses of brilliance. It was really enjoyable to drive when I was able to drive it well, and when the tires were hooking up. I feel like a faster driver would do really well with this car, and I'll definitely be checking out it again as I get deeper into my sim journey. But I will say it was a bit anticlimactic, a little bit boring. It honestly just it wasn't my favorite car in the world to drive. Um, with that being said, we did have a best lap of 1 minute and 59 seconds, 0.615. Our standard deviation was 2.1 or 2.384. And honestly, I would rate this car as an overall experience of 3 out of 5. Uh, Not great, but not the worst. Picking up right where we left off, we have the 2016 Lexus RCF GT3, and we will start with a quick sound check. Now, this thing sounds like a race car. Honestly, it was a ton of fun to drive. It's extremely stable and easy. I felt really comfortable getting right into it with the aggressive preset, and I honestly really enjoyed this car. It never really got out of hand, but at the same time, it was not overly fast anywhere. Um, I struggled to get under a 2 minute lap time, which is pretty pedestrian at best, even for a rookie. Um, and I found that it really doesn't like low speed turns. Also, the A pillar here that you can see on the left side of the screen was really distracting and kind of difficult to see around and hit apexes. And overall, I mean, it was a lot of fun, but I felt like there was some room for improvement from, with my own driving as well as just performance available. With that said, we had a best lap of 1 minute 59.970 seconds. Our standard deviation was much better than the Mercedes at 0.534, so we were able to be really consistent. And I would give this an overall experience of a 3, similar to the Mercedes. It was a lot of fun to drive, but it just wasn't overly fast anywhere. The next car on our list is the 2018 Bentley Continental, and we will start with a sound check. All right, to start with this car, uh, the most obvious bit about it is that it is the only car that's right-hand drive, which took me a minute to get used to. However, I did actually enjoy it quite a bit on this track. It Some of the more difficult corners and apexes to hit, it made it quite a bit easier. And I'll follow that by saying it was an absolute joy to drive. It was very easy, it was forgiving, and I felt like it was really beginner friendly. Um, I felt like it was one of the most consistent cars I've driven, and I honestly really enjoyed it. With that said, it does feel a bit heavy. Reminds me a bit of a pontoon boat. It is fast, but it just everything kind of felt slow. Um, it was pretty understeer prone, which I feel like could be fixed with a little bit of settings and preset changes. But I really did feel like I could push this car hard and I wouldn't get punished too badly. So to go to our chart here, we had a best lap of 2 minutes, 1 second, point 720. So definitely not our best lap so far. With a standard deviation of 1.325, so not as good as the Lexus, but better than the Mercedes. And honestly, I'd rate this a 2 out of 5, with one being the best. And I really enjoyed this car, and I felt like if I put some time into it, I could get some pace out of it. The next car on our list is the 2018 Ferrari 488 GT3. Per usual, we'll start with a sound check. Now, as stated in the intro, we'll be testing the 488 and not the 296, since the 296 is DLC. And you can really see that it seems like the development on the 488 hasn't really kept up with a lot of the other cars. Um, the 488 is really understeery. I had a hard time turning in no matter what I was doing, and it just in general felt like the brake power was really weak comparatively to the other cars that I was testing. Um, Felt like it slid a lot into turns, in the middle of turns, out of turns, but honestly, it was pretty fun overall, and it was relatively simple to catch the slides, as annoying as it could be that it was sliding in the first place. But I can say it was definitely stable on high speed turns, but it just felt like it was unstable everywhere else. And then field of view wise, this car was kind of hard to see while I was turning into the apex. So just overall, not the greatest experience ever with this one, but it's a Ferrari. So to our chart, our best lap was 2 minutes point 932. So not our best, but not our worst. Our standard deviation is 1.437. Again, not our best, but not our worst. And we're going to stay on theme here with an overall experience rating of a 3. Um, Serviceable. but honestly, not the most fun to drive, but still, not too bad. The next car on our list is the 2018 Nissan GTR Nismo GT3, and we'll start with a sound check. Not too bad. So, this car felt like it was balanced better than anything that I've tried. Um, I was a bit excited to try this car after seeing the Gran Turismo movie, and honestly, it was quite a bit of fun. It was the easiest to drive and by far the least problematic. It felt very similar to the Bentley in that way, and I felt like it inspired confidence and allowed me to try some new lines, which I appreciated being a new driver. With that being said, it was a bit slow just about everywhere. So now to the chart. We had a best lap of 1 minute 59 seconds, 0.802, with a standard deviation of 0.485, which is the best we've had so far. And I would give this an overall experience rating of a 2. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It did seem like it wasn't as challenging though as I may have wanted. Moving on to the 2019 Aston Martin Racing V8 Vantage. We'll start with a sound check. Sounds quite nice. Now, I have to admit, this was the first car that I started with, and after making it about halfway through, I felt like I didn't give it a fair shot since I was still kind of learning the track and trying to understand how to properly drive on the simulator. So I gave it another try and did another 10 laps. So this will be the review on that second stint that I did. So to start, similar to the Mercedes, the Bentley, it kind of feels like a boat. It didn't move that great, especially the first time I tried it. The second time, I felt like it was getting better, but I still felt like I mean, it was most likely my driving, but I felt like it wasn't that great if I have to be honest. What I can say though is it feels like it would be easy to learn with, and it's a car that I think I'll explore again in the future because it sounds great. The field of view is great, and honestly, it eats curbs alive. So I really enjoyed that bit. Um, it does have a tendency to oversteer when you're pushing, but I did find it was fairly easy to catch the slides when the rear end would get loose. Now over to our chart. We had a best lap on our second stint of 2 minutes, 1 second, 0.072, the standard deviation of 3.573. The standard deviation is the worst that we've seen so far, but that was because I, with the oversteering, I was having a hard time not spinning the car. Um, Overall experience, though, honestly, I would give it a 3. I did enjoy it. It's something that I think I'll look into and drive again in the future, and, yeah, overall, it was pretty nice. Next is the 2019 Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo 2. We'll start with a sound check. I just love the sound of this car. Now, for the review. It inspires confidence, but at times I felt like almost too much. I really enjoyed this car, but the feeling I got was that I wasn't a good enough driver to drive it properly. Um, I did about twice as many laps in this as any other car, and not even half of them I was able to keep on the track for the entirety of the lap. It does take turns well, and, I felt like it turned in really nice, and I had a lot of confidence in that, and it does feel like it accelerates out of the turns fairly quickly. It doesn't oversteer that much, but, when it did oversteer, I spun, and there was no saving it. So over to the chart, we had a best lap of 2 minutes, 2 seconds, 0.722. This would be our slowest so far, and that was mostly because I just had to pull myself back, trying not to spin and trying to stay consistent. Our standard deviation is 4.888. Like I said, I had a really hard time being consistent with this. An overall experience, 4 out of 5, again, with 1 being the best. It wasn't the worst experience ever, but I just don't feel like the Audi R8 really tenders to the rookie sim driver. Next on our list is the 2019 Honda NSX GT3 Evo, and we'll start with a sound check. This car just sounds great. I have a really hard time with this review because I love this car in real life, and from what I can see as far as iRacing goes, it is relatively competitive. But in ACC, I just felt like it was unpredictable and unstable, and I struggled with most turns. It was extremely bumpy. It didn't have a great top speed, and if the tires weren't perfect, it would spin on me. I can say though, it was satisfying as anything when you really or when you could put a lap together. So, without wasting too much time, we'll go over to our chart, and we have a best lap of 2 minutes and 1 second, 0.367, a standard deviation of 6.898. Again, just because they're having a hard time keeping it on the track. An overall experience of a 5. It was really, really difficult to handle. Moving on to a car that I found a lot more enjoyable than I thought I would, the 2019 Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Let's start with a sound check. This car just sounds incredible. I felt extremely confident turning in at high speed, and it was really the first car that I tested that I really felt like I could turn in at the end of the long straight with a lot of confidence. I felt like the braking was exceptional, and it was a lot of fun to drive. It was challenging at times, but I felt like it was challenging in all of the best ways. I did find that it could be a little oversteer prone, um, but that very well could be preset or just my driving style. And I was a bit surprised by this given that there's an Evo 2 available as DLC, and it's the Evo 2 is definitely something that I'll be checking out in the future. And moving over to the chart, we have our best lap at 1 minute 58 seconds, 0.805, which is the best we've seen so far. Our standard deviation of 1.833, pretty good. And our overall experience, honestly, I would rate this a 2. I felt like it was very close to perfect, which makes me excited to try the Evo 2 someday. Our next car is the 2019 Porsche 991 GT3R. We'll start with the sound check. This car, I mean, I've said it the last couple cars, but this one is by far my favorite so far that I've tested. As I said in the intro, this is the 991, not the 992, and that's because the 992 is DLC, and we'll test it in the future, but that's for another day. Now, this car felt like I turned the sensitivity up to the maximum. It was extremely light and nimble, and honestly felt really nice. The car turned in great, and when I hit my marks, it really felt amazing. I did thoroughly enjoy this car. Now, the balance felt like it was easily upset by curbs and banks, and it was a bit difficult to be smooth with it, and the car became harder to drive as the laps went on. It just felt like the balance was working its way out, likely um, just from fuel load being burnt off. And overall, I just felt like it was kind of difficult to be confident with. With that being said, being a new sim driver and not fully understanding what I should be feeling in the steering wheel, um, it did help because with the sensitivity being turned up to the max, it was blatantly obvious when I was understeering or oversteering. So it was nice in that respect. Now over to our chart. We just barely nudged out the Lamborghini Huracan with a best lap of 1 minute 58 seconds, 0.660. And as a spoiler alert, this was the best lap we were able to complete. Our standard deviation was 5.893. And again, this was just, I had a hard time being consistent with it, but I think with a little more time, I may have been able to figure it out. Uh, the overall experience, I'll give it a 3. Um, have a hard time with it. I really enjoy Porsche. I enjoyed driving this car, but I just can't rate it any higher at my current skill level. The next car on our list is the 2022 BMW M4 GT3. Now for a sound check. Not the best, but not the worst. Honestly, I was a bit disappointed with this car. I wouldn't call myself a BMW fanboy, but I drove with this car quite a bit on controller before I had switched over to a wheel and pedals, and I enjoyed it on the controller. But with the wheel, it felt really numb. It seemed like it understeered into slow corners. It was oversteering in fast corners. I'd spun out in the corner after the long straight 8 of the 10 times. I just I had a really hard time with it, and it didn't feel nearly as good as other cars, and that could be down to preset. I know there's plenty of fast drivers that use the BMW, so don't be discouraged. Try it for yourself. But for me, it really didn't feel that great. So onto the chart, we had a best lap of 2 minutes and 1 second, 0.217, standard deviation of 11.518. By far the worst, but again, it was just because I couldn't get a lap together. And overall, I'd rate this a 5. I really didn't enjoy this car. Moving on to what I believe to be the best looking car in the game. It's the 2023 McLaren 720S Evo. Now for a sound check. This car just does it for me. It's an absolute dream to drive, and I had so much confidence turning into high speed turns in medium speed turns. It was just really, really enjoyable to drive. With that being said, it doesn't like curbs at all, and it's a tad understeer prone going into turns and a tad oversteer prone going out of turns. And specifically on the low speed turns, I had a little bit of a hard time turning in. Um, I'm sure it could be fixed with preset adjustments. Overall, I really did enjoy this car. I loved the field of view. I love the way it sounds. It just overall, it just felt really, really nice. Now over to the chart. We have a best lap splitting the difference between the Lamborghini Huracan and the Porsche 991 at 1 minute 58 seconds, 0.710. We had a standard deviation of 1.038. And honestly, I'd give this an overall experience of a 1, which is our first one of this testing so far. I really enjoyed this, and I didn't feel like any of its problems were bad enough for me to really get hung up on. I felt like a lot of it could be fixed with me just gaining a better understanding of how the presets work. Last, but certainly not least, we have the 2024 Ford Mustang GT3. And now for a sound check. This car is incredibly loud. Now, this car allowed me to achieve my track competency. I tested it relatively early on, and I was able to be really, really consistent with it. I only had one lap above 2 minute and 2 seconds, which was saying something comparatively against a lot of the other cars that I was testing. Did have a slight tendency to understeer in and oversteer out, but that was kind of to be expected with a car as heavy and as powerful as the Ford Mustang. Does have a great top speed and has really nice braking. It was a lot of fun to drive, and honestly, it felt like I could really push myself to learn trail braking, and I could really see the effects of it. I also felt like it was really easy to push, and owning a Mustang GT in real life for several years, it felt relatively comparable to the driving style of what you would feel in real life. Now, moving over to our chart, we have a best lap of 1 minute 59 seconds, 0.950, which is just barely under 2 minutes. But we have a standard deviation of 0.888, which is some of the most consistency that we've seen throughout the entirety of the test. For that reason, I'm going to give this an overall rating of a 1, being the second one that we've seen throughout this test, along with the McLaren. So I felt like it was really enjoyable to drive and something that I could see myself driving in the future. Now that testing is complete, all that's left is to look at the data and see which car we'll be using for the upcoming LFM season. If we rank the cars by best lap, our third place finisher is the Lamborghini Huracan, our second place finisher is the McLaren 720S, and our first place fastest car was the Porsche 991. If we rank the cars by consistency, our third place finisher is the Ford Mustang GT3, our second place finisher is the Lexus RCF, and our first place finisher is the Nissan GTR Nismo. If we look at overall experience, we had plenty of cars that ranked a 2, but there's only 2 cars that ranked a 1, being the Ford Mustang GT3 and the McLaren 720S. After tallying up all the scores, there's one car that stands above the rest, and that car is the 2023 McLaren 720S Evo will be the car that I'll be using in this upcoming LFM season. If you're interested in seeing how I do in my first couple races, stay tuned for next week's video.